All right, this is the third in a probably 4 video series in which I rank tier list style the games that I played in 2021. In the first video, I ended with this tier list here that's up on the screen, which was games that I'd played that I'd not played in person, had only played digitally in 2021. Yeah, Board Game Arena, iPad apps, etc. Then in the previous video, I began to rank the games that I had played in person. Basically, an alphabetical list of games. I did the first half of them. And these are games that, while I may have played them digitally as well, I at least played once over the board. So it's a little mislabeled, primarily in person. Some games like chess, which is an S tier game for me, I played hundreds of times online, more than I did in person. But if I played a game at least once in person, then they're going on this in these videos here, in video 2 and video 3. And I'm going to leave these up on the screen and then just continue to insert the remainder of the games that I played in person onto this scaffold. So I encourage you to check out the previous 2 videos if you want to see my comments as I place the games into the tier list, but I'm just going to move on here, starting with Orleans. Orleans is a game that I own. It's a bag building game in which you were pulling, can't remember what they're called. They're not called characters, but you're pulling these persons out of the bag. They come in different varieties. You've got the farmer, you've got the knight, etc. And then on your player board, you can activate actions with combinations of these personages, either 2 or 3 of them. So it's a combination of strategy of building your bag with the types of workers that you want to use most often, and also tactically, given what I pulled out of the bag, what's my best move. The actions that you're taking allow you to move across the board, picking up goods, and they allow you to move down a couple of different tracks in the game, and so forth. It's a very fun game, very fun puzzle. I think I liked it more when I first got the game, maybe a little bit less now. Maybe I need to get an expansion or something like that to juice it back up, but it's still an A tier game. And it's an excellent, excellent game that I strongly recommend. Paladins, it's funny, these games seem to be coming in pairs sometimes, in match sets. Paladins has a similarity to Orleans in that on your player board, you're activating actions with combinations of workers that aren't pulled out of a bag, but it's essentially the same thing. Each round, based on choices that you make and cards that come out, you get different colored meeples, and these meeples have names. The purple ones are criminals, and the green ones are hunters or foragers or something like that, and the blue ones are merchants, and again, based on the combination of colors that you have, you can activate certain actions. But Paladins also has a lot more going on in terms of this fantastic attribute system, where certain actions you need to have built up your strength or your influence or your faith, and then once you take those actions, you may increase your strength or your influence or your faith. One of these games, kind of games that I love, where there's lots of interlocking systems and there's lots of ways to win, and every game seems to play out differently. And it's frankly definitely an S-tier game, and definitely one of my favorite games of all time. Solo mode is excellent. Multiplayer mode is excellent. It's possible I like Concordia more than Paladins. They're neck and neck, really. I love both of these games. Pandemic is a game that obviously, great reputation. Me personally, I had Forbidden Island and Forbidden Desert first, so they were kind of my same designer, kind of my image of a co-op game. I think a lot of people start with Pandemic, and I just love Forbidden Island and Forbidden Desert because I like the way the maps change in both of those games, whereas the map in Pandemic is static. And so I would say I didn't really like Pandemic as much as those games, and really haven't played it much. Multiplayer, it's an okay game. But then I started playing it solo, just two-handed pick 2 characters, try to beat the game. And for a solo game, it's really, I mean, it's fun co-op too, but it's really easy solo game. I'm often playing heavy games like Paladins with lots of setups and lots of bits and lots to keep track of with the AI. Whereas if you're just playing 2 against the game, 2-handed against the game, Pandemic's very quick and very easy. So that's definitely brought it up in my ratings. It would probably be a C tier game if I hadn't started playing it 2-handed solo. So I would put it, it's hard to say, probably just behind Clank and Space on the B tier. But all these B tier games are strong. Pictionary, obviously, classic party game where you're drawing stuff as quickly as you can. Pictionary is a great concept, but it suffers for me because the rules are so dumb. Sometimes everybody's playing, sometimes just your team is playing. You roll the dice to move down the board. I don't know. It seems like if you put some good rules on this game, the idea of drawing a picture to try to represent what's on the card is a fun activity, but the game that's built around it is pretty weak. So I would call this a D tier game. I would play it. I'd probably put it behind New York Zoo. I would play it, but I really wish it had a better rule set, because I think there's a good idea there that just is buried with terrible rules. Pit is a game that I shouldn't like, but I do. It's a game where people are just yelling at each other, trying to make trades, and you're trying to get all the cards in your hand to be the same. There's, 10 different commodities or something that you're trading for, 9 or 10 different commodities, and you want your hand to be full of one type of commodity. And it's chaotic, but quick, perfectly fun, perfectly harmless. It is very much like a Hanabi. Probably I enjoy Hanabi more than Pit. So Kingsburg, Ecos, and Mystery of the Abbey are all games that I've just played once. So I really have trouble rating those, but I'll slot Pit in just ahead because I've played that, half a dozen times or so. Porta Nigra is a game that I've only played once. It's a kind of a fascinating game where you are picking up these bricks that are building towers in different regions of the board. The color of the bricks matters. There's a good system for how you obtain the bricks. There's cards that you can get that will give you free actions. So it's a solid Euro game. I am looking forward to playing this one more. I know that I like it enough to place it on the B tier. And I think I would put it right behind Pandemic, just ahead of Notre Dame. Again, Notre Dame and Newton are games that I've only played once, and I'm optimistic about them, but I really need to play them more to decide. And Porta Nigra, I would say I feel more confident is going to stay on B tier than those other 2 games, which is why I'm slotting it just in front of them. Potion Explosion is for me in my head, it's in the category of Century, Splendor, in that it's a very fun game, addictive game, relatively quick playing, streamlined rule sets. It's not going to be a game that's ever going to be an S tier or A tier for me because it's just not deep enough and complex enough, but it is fun and it is easy to teach, and I've played it more online than in person, but I've gotten to play it in person a couple times. Obviously, it's more fun, pulling the marbles out of the thing than doing it online, although the implementation on Board Game Arena is very good. I do think it is a game maybe like Splendor, but it may be even worse than Splendor, where you just cannot make a mistake. You just need to clear off potions every turn. You cannot afford to keep those marbles on your potions from one turn to the next. So I think the game suffers from photosynthesis like this for me too. It just feels like if you miss a turn, you make one inaccurate move, you're not going to win the game. If you're playing with somebody who's also honed their efficiency. So I think it's a game that suffers from becoming an expert at it, because once you become an expert at it, it's no longer fun. It's like I have to make every particular move perfectly. So for that reason, even though it's a very good game, I think it's flawed. I think it's probably flawed. I'm going to put it on C tier, but it's an outlier on C tier. Well, maybe not. There's a couple games on C tier that are like this. Totally happy to play it. I just wish, and maybe like an expansion or something would make it, just give you multiple ways to win, a little more flexibility. I think would make it a better game. Raiders of the North Sea is I went back and forth for a long time. Do I want to buy Raiders of the North Sea or do I want to buy Champions of Midgard? And I don't know if I made the right choice because I bought Raiders of the North Sea. But I like Raiders of the North Sea, and I tend to play it with the Hall of Heroes expansion, which I think makes the game more interesting. It's got a very good solo mode, so that's nice, although it's a bit tedious to set up. But it's very fun to play multiplayer. It's a beautiful game. It's got a pretty clean rule set, so I like it. It's right around Architects of the West Kingdom for me by the same designers. I said in the last video I think I like it more than that, so maybe I'll stick with that. And I will call it a very strong B tier game. Not quite to A tier yet, although maybe I should get the other expansion and see if that pushes it up for me. Red Rising is a game that I played maybe half a dozen times this year. I don't own it, but I was able to play it. Played 6-player games of this. I played 3-player games of this. I played it solo. And it's funny because as much as I played it, I still don't know how I feel about it. The gameplay itself is pretty fun. It's kind of a rummy style game where you're drawing a card and you're playing a card. There's more rules built around it than just that. But I don't know anything about the Red Rising universe. I'm not terribly interested in. It's based on a novel series. I'm not really interested. It's science fiction, which I like, but nothing about the theme really attracts me to it. But the, it's competently done game, attractive game. I just don't know where it's going to shake out. So I think I like it enough to put it on B tier. And I think I'll slot it right in front of Clank and Space with the expectation that I probably will play it more, and those plays might clarify exactly how I feel about it eventually. Let's see here. Regicide. Regicide is a game that is a cooperative game that's played with a standard deck of cards. There is a published version of this game, but I don't have it. I've just downloaded the print and play rules and used a standard we use the Joker, so 54 card deck of cards. We've beaten it. It seemed impossibly tough at first, but we've beaten it. My kids really like it, so it's something that will probably get played again. It's impressive what was done with a 54 deck of cards. It's not going to have staying power for me, I don't think, but it's definitely worth playing. I'll put it on C tier. I don't like it as much as Potion Explosion, but I like it more than Pit. Roll for the Galaxy, one of the first games I bought when I started getting into the hobby. And I very much dislike Race for the Galaxy, but I very much like Roll for the Galaxy, so the dice are beautiful. I love customized dice, and there is no end of customized dice in this game. It just feels a little freer than Race for the Galaxy, although I think I've seen the way people play it online, and I think there's a lot of the same things going on. People deck dive a lot online. They look for particular combos, and that's just not my style. So maybe the only difference between Roll and Race is really just who I've played it with and how I've experienced the game. I don't know. I think Roll is a better game. I think it's a funner game. And in fact, it's one of my kids really likes Roll for the Galaxy. I don't know that I like it as much as some of the A-tier games, but it's pretty close to an A-tier game for me. Um, and definitely for, like I said, for one of my kids. So I would place Roll for the Galaxy right ahead of Euphoria and right behind Architects of the West Kingdom. That was a lot of shuffling around to get that in the right spot. There's going to be a lot of B tier games. B tier is going to have to start layering the box covers here, because here's Rolling Realms. Rolling Realms, I own this one. It's a very quick playing roll and write type game, very nicely produced, very inexpensive game, very easy to teach, harmless, not a deep game, not one that but seems to have staying power. So far I've not gotten tired of it. Happy to pull this one out. So it's a B tier game, and it belongs on B tier, probably right ahead of Escape, Curse of the Temple. All right, next game is San Juan. San Juan's another very old game in terms of my collection. Thought I had that layer locked. A very old game in terms of my collection. One of the first games I played, and I think it's maybe finally starting to get stale as a result of all the plays. And also, I played this game with my nephew, and my nephew has this hyper-focused strategy that works. So that has kind of dimmed my enthusiasm for San Juan a bit. I would be happy to play it, but it's probably finally bumped its way down to C tier, but a very strong C tier game, and one I'm happy to teach and play. So categories, I like word games. I'm good at word games. Of the mass market games that I've rated, it's one of the stronger ones because the rules are perfectly fine. It suffers a little bit from that thing of like, does this really count? People at the table kind of have to agree, yeah, that fits the category. Yeah, you're not like throwing in extra words that don't make a lot of sense just to get extra points. So I don't like it when games have that, but in terms of a game that people like, that's easy to teach, easy to set up, yeah, it's strong. So I would put it just behind Potion Explosion on C tier. But one of the better party games that I played, Scythe. Scythe is, I would say, kind of the start of my board game mania. I did not, it was a total surprise birthday present. And I never had a game like this. I was just blown away by the size of the board, the art on the map, the components. I loved the whole manipulation of the player board. I loved thinking ahead to trying to take both the top and bottom row actions. Everything I liked about it. And then I got Invaders from Afar as a present. I got Wind Gambit as a present. I went out and bought Rise of Fenris myself. I've been active on the Scythe boards. I made my own fan expansion. I love the solo mode. I can't say enough good things about this game. It is one of my top 2 games of all time. Set a Watch. Set a Watch is an interesting one. The first time I played it, you can play it 1 to 4 players. It's a co-op game, and it really works. I mean, there's no difference between 1 and 4 players because you always have to play with 4 characters. So you're either running all 4 of them, or you're playing with a partner and you're each doing 2 of them, or you're doing 3 of them and there's this shared system for one of the characters, or you're playing all 4 people. And it's a card-playing game where you're trying to, puzzle out, like, how can I squeeze as much out of my character's abilities to defeat all the monsters in this round so that I can move on to the next round. It's a game of accumulating deficits. Your campfire goes down over time. Your characters take wounds over time. And you can build up the campfire and you can build up your health, but you can never exceed it. You never gain any new abilities in this game. It's just a constant onslaught for 9 rounds, and you hope to survive. And I prefer engine building games, leveling up games, to pandemic style, can you survive all of these cuts? But there's something about Set a Watch. I've decided that there's just too much cuts. There's just too much pain. There's just too much random draws that are frustrating. I've set up games and put them away after a round or two because I could see where things were going. You can get that with Pandemic too. You can get really unlucky setup card draws where all of your infected cities are next to each other and halfway across the board, and then not much of a chance you're going to win. Set a Watch seems to have that happen to me more. There's this weird debate online between people who think it's just super easy and people think that it's completely impossible. I've won. I've had thrilling games of this where I've won in the last, at the last possible moment. And there just have not been enough thrilling games to sustain it. And I really don't know what to do with this game in terms of do I keep it or do I get rid of it? Is it total trash or does it have some redeeming qualities? But I'm going to put it down on D tier. I like the gameplay more than Gangster City, but less than Airland and the Sea, so it's going to go on D tier. People may love it, though. Shadows over Camelot is another co-op game that is fun in big groups. It has some things that I like it has a bunch of mini games around the board, and each one works slightly differently. I really like that. I like that in Istanbul. I like that in Trajan. I like that in games where there's, Rolling Realms is another example where there's lots of mini games to play. But the more I play it, the more I guess I've fallen out of love with it. Totally happy to play it. No problem playing it, but it is a C tier game for me. At this point, I would play it above Categories, but maybe not above Potion Explosion. It's decent. Space Base is a relatively new purchase of mine. It's somewhat of an engine building game. It's a dice rolling game. It's got this mechanic where on somebody else's turn you use one of the dice, or no, you use the dice and you do something with them. Usually less powerful than what the main person does, but very elegantly implemented. There's a lot of elegance in this design. The way the setup works is elegant. So it's a decent game. And I like it, but I can't say that I love it. So I'm going to put this game down on C tier. I put it just ahead of San Juan. Strongest game on C tier. Spy Connection is a game I've only played once. It's a game where you are kind of leaving breadcrumbs on the board that's enabling you to shuffle between cities. You are filling out these city cards by checking off that you've been to various parts of the board. And I just felt like it was a lot of going in circles, a lot of running around in circles and doing the same thing for the entire game. And maybe also it's the kind of game where somebody who squeaks out a little bit of an advantage is just going to be able to maintain that advantage for the rest of the game. So I was happy to play it. I would play it again, but I'm going to put it on D tier right behind New York Zoo, which I think I'd rather play. A little more going on with New York Zoo than Spy Connection. Star Trek, the trivia game. I have mixed feelings about this. I love Star Trek. I love testing my trivia knowledge on Star Trek. But unfortunately, it's a trivia game where it's multiple choice, which is kind of lamer. The questions aren't terribly well worded. The cards are hard to read. The font's ridiculously small. The rules of how you move around the board they add nothing to the game whatsoever. So it's definitely a fail. But it's a fail like, what game did I say this about? I can't remember. It's a fail where I feel, it's Pictionary, where I feel like there's a core. I mean, I love Star Trek trivia. There's a core of something good there, but the people who put it together were not game designers, and they were not even particularly good at writing trivia questions. Taboo, another mass market game. Taboo is a team game where you're giving clues, but you have to avoid certain words when you're giving the clue, and then you are doing it quickly. How many clues can you get right before the timer runs out? It is a game that suffers from the Dixit problem, where if two people know each other well, they're going to have a massive advantage over somebody who's at the party and just doesn't know other people that well. So the fun of the game is tightly connected to, are you giving clues to somebody that you know very well? And therefore you can give a clue, oh, remember last week when we went to the basketball, as opposed to having to avoid words that you would be giving to a stranger where you don't have any kind of connection. So that's too bad. It's a flaw of those kinds of games. However, I tend to play it where I'm giving clues to my wife, my kids are giving clues to each other, my parents are giving clues to each other, and everybody's at a very high level. Everybody's really capable of giving good clues. So I've tended to have really good experiences with Taboo. And so I can't quite justify putting it on A tier, can I? I don't think so, because of that flaw. So I will put it on B tier. It is fun. I'm going to put it, could go anywhere on these three tiers, really. I'll put it right ahead of Crusaders. I have hopes for Terraforming Mars Ares Edition, but I don't know where it's going to end up either. Okay, Tapestry. Tapestry is a game that is absolutely gorgeous. I don't own it. I don't think I can afford it, but it's really gorgeous. And I've gone through 2 cycles with this game. I borrowed it from my friend. I played it a lot, solo mode, but also against my kids. It was fine. And then recently we busted it out again, and my older daughter just fell in love with the game and went on this Tapestry mania, where she started playing the new port on Board Game Arena, reading everything she could about the game. So that enabled us to play some online too. And it's gone, I would say, from an A down to a B, maybe back up to an A. It's an A tier game. I'm really looking forward to the expansion. I really think it's a strong game with lots of interesting decisions. The game plays out differently every time. And yeah, I would put it right as the strongest spot on A tier. I really like Istanbul with both expansions, but I think it's an A tier. I think Tapestry beats it out. Terraforming Mars. So I've already rated Ares Expedition. Terraforming Mars, again, got it as a surprise Christmas present one year. And when I got it, I'm like, oh man, they didn't have to get me this game. I've got a friend who's got it. I played it with a friend. It was fine. It seemed interesting. I think we misplayed some rules the first time, so I was looking forward to playing it again. But I didn't think I needed to own it. And I was wrong. I needed to own this game. I needed to own this game. I needed to own every expansion of this game. I need to play every corporation, solo, multiplayer. I am so not tired of this game. I've been playing a lot solo. It's still the game, I'd say it's the game right now I like to play most solo. I think it's just Edged Scythe for that, and Edged Paladins. Both of those games have great solo modes. My kids love it. It's probably my older daughter's favorite game, unless Tapestry has now usurped it. And I think for the first time, I will even claim that Terraforming Mars is my favorite game. I've said that about Scythe forever, and I'm sure Scythe will have its resurgence because I haven't tired of that game either. But right now, let's put Terraforming Mars as number 1. Spoiler alert, it's going to hold that position for the rest of the list. The Grizzled is a co-op game, card-playing game, kind of thing where you're playing in turn, you're trying to keep the cards on the table, not having 3 of some symbol. There are certain moves that you can make to avoid playing cards, but those tend to just kind of delay the inevitable. It is meant to be a brutally difficult game because it's simulating a brutally difficult time period in history, and I think it is tastefully done, great components, and I will always play it because it's not a long game. But I would not say that it's a game that I think strategically is very interesting. It's but then there's some strategically uninteresting games that I rank high, like King of Tokyo, or I don't know, like Taboo or something like that. But yeah, I'll put it right behind Shadows over Camelot on C tier. The Island of El Dorado was the first game that I ever kickstarted, and I was just fascinated by. I love maps that change in play. I talked about Forbidden Island, Forbidden Desert. I remember Survive from my childhood. I love that in games, so watching the Kickstarter preview video, I could see that you were drawing tiles and you were making this map of this island as you were exploring, and I thought that was cool. It ended up not being a Euro-y game, though. It ended up being a very Ameritrash style game and it ended up being very Munchkin-like, where you'd get almost to winning and then you get knocked back to almost nothing and you had to build up your forces again. So you gotta like that kind of game. It's not my kind of game. It does hold a place in my heart, though, because I thought the Kickstarter campaign was unbelievably well run for a group of people that had never made a game before. Their communication was excellent. The component quality was outstanding. Magnetically sealed box, individual bags, nice bags for the player pieces of all the varieties, an extra character board, beautiful little heavy pyramid, Aztec pyramid components that look great on the board. So everything about it was just great. But it was also clear that they were inspired by Catan, and they wanted to make a mobile Catan where you're moving your units around a Catan-style board and fighting each other. So you're taking a game that it's okay, I like Catan fine, but then you're adding elements to it that don't really enhance what Catan does. So gameplay-wise, it's lower on my list. I still don't mind playing it. But component-wise, quality of the Kickstarter campaign, and those I will probably never buy another game from them just because I'm not crazy about their design philosophy. But clearly they're getting more and more Euro. They've got games like Windward and some kind of interesting ancient Egypt or Atlantis type of theme or something going on. So they've built themselves quite an operation there. But I think if I'm honest with myself, it's a D tier game, but strong. I would put it at the top of the D tier list. The Mind is a game where I'm not sure it's a game. You're just playing cards from your hands in any order around the table, co-op wise, trying to go from the lowest numbers to highest numbers, and you can't communicate. I tend not to like games where you can't communicate. I tend not to like guessing games. I tend not to like moronically simple games. Despite all of that, I've enjoyed playing The Mind. It's quick. So I've also had games of The Mind that, like, we were not all on the same page, and it was just really like, why did I engage in this activity? I had no control over it, and it was not fun. But most games of The Mind that I've played have been fun. So I would put it on C tier. I would say it's more fun than The Grizzled. It's more fun than Shadows over Camelot. It is not more fun than Potion Explosion. The Voyage is the Marco Polo, a game I was really excited about when I bought it, played it, thought, oh my god, it's impossible to score points in this game. It's impossible to travel. It's a dice action selection kind of game. Very tight, 5 rounds. 5 dice. You're using multiple dice for most actions, so you have very little wiggle room in this game. You have these asymmetric character powers that make the game very fun, and you've got a variable board setup where you're putting cards out in different places that make the game very fun. And then I figured it out. Light went on. I figured out how to travel across the board, and I decided Voyage of Marco Polo is an amazing game. It is an A-tier game for me, and I would put it right ahead of Istanbul and right behind Tapestry. Trajan is a Stefan Feld game. In a previous video, I put Castles of Burgundy on S tier, and I said it is my second favorite Stefan Feld game because Trajan is my favorite Stefan Feld game. It has 2 things I like. mini games, different parts of the board where you're doing different things and that are interconnected. And then it has this fantastic action selection system of this Mancala, where you're moving pegs around an action selection wheel and you're trying to get certain colors of those pegs in certain spaces to get bonuses. It's such a fascinating game. It's a beautiful game, and obviously it's an S-tier game that's going in front of the castles of Burgundy. I think it's going in front of Concordia and right behind Paladins. Yeah, I think those are my top 5 games right there. Yeah, spoiler alert, those are my top 5 games right there. Trickerion I've played once. It was torture. It seems to be similar to a game like Paladins where you've got lots going on, but seemed very linear the way you build up to do your tricks, and I never completely understood what was going on in this game. So I'm going to put this on F tier just because it was so painful to play. I would play it again, though. I would play it again. Maybe the light will go on like it did for me for Voyages and Marco Polo. I could very well be just needing something to snap into place with Trickerion, but it hadn't happened yet. Vault Wars. Vault Wars is an auction-style game where somebody lays out some cards face down. You can peek at one of them, usually. You're bidding money to get these. You're trying to make sets. This is a very good idea that needs a 2.0 version. The rules just are it's too complicated. There are too many different auction styles. There's too much peeking going on. They had a great core idea, and then I think they went too crazy with building on it. So it's a flawed game. I picked it up very cheaply at a Barnes & Noble discount bin. I'm glad I did, but it really needs a 2.0. Maybe I like it a little bit better than Pictionary. Spy Connection. Yeah, I'll slot it right behind New York Zoo on D tier. There's a game there, though. I mean, there's a really unique game there that somebody needs to update. Viscounts of the West Kingdom is, of course, the... why do I do that? Is the last game in the West Kingdom series. I've got Architects of the West Kingdom here. I've got Paladins of the West Kingdom here. Viscounts is in the middle for me. I think it's an A tier game. I'm going to put it at the end of A tier. Viticulture is a classic worker placement game. I think top 25 game on BGG. Very linear for how you get your way to making wine. Very slow game where first half of the game you've got almost no points, and then the second half of the game you're charging ahead. So I'm not crazy about the pacing of the game. I'm not crazy about the linear nature of the game, although there are multiple strategies to win. I don't have the expansion. I don't love the solo mode. So for those reasons, it is probably going to be... I do like it, though. I mean, I can't claim that it's a C tier game. It's a B tier game. But I don't like it as much as other Stonemaier games like Euphoria and Between Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig and Rolling Realms, which are all on B tier. Scythe, of course, is on S tier. So I would put Viticulture... I don't like it as much as Red Rising. I like it more than Pandemic, though. I'll put it between Clank and Space and Pandemic. Speaking of Stonemaier games, here's Wingspan. Wingspan is a game in which every card in the deck is unique. You're playing them into these rows. You're activating the cards every time you activate that row's action. Gaining food, laying eggs, drawing cards. Very tight, very nice game. Great economy of how the eggs, cards, and food all interact with one another. It went from a B tier game to an A tier game with the Oceania expansion. I own the Oceania expansion. A friend owns the European expansion. They're both good expansions. They didn't ruin the economy of the game, although some people think Oceania did, but I don't think it did. So I would put, and Wingspan solo mode's pretty good. It's gotten better with Oceania. So I'm going to put it right on A tier, right behind Viscounts of the West Kingdom. A Zombie Flux is a Flux game, which means it should be on F tier. But of the Flux games that I've played, I like it the most. So that pushes it up above Mahjong and Star Trek the Trivia Game. And there, folks, is the games that I've played at least once over the board in 2021 and how they rank. And that ends this series of videos, although I will have a fourth video that summarizes. I'll put all the games up, and I'll tell you the list of games that ended up in each tier, and I will try very hard to make that a 10-minute video. So, thanks for watching. Come back for the short summary, especially if you didn't want to review all of these long videos.